Hello and welcome. We've all had that dream, right? The one where projects just flow. They run smoothly, they hit their deadlines, and there's none of that last-minute chaos we're all so used to. But then reality hits. You try to implement a big change like critical chain, and that dream just smashes into a brick wall of resistance. So today, let's talk about how to actually break through that wall.
I bet this sounds familiar. You get fired up about a genuinely better way of working, a real game changer, and this is the first thought that pops into your head. Or maybe you hear it whispered down the hall. It's that cynical voice of experience, and let me tell you, it is the #1 killer of strategic change, bar none.
And this right here is the core of why so many big changes fizzle out. The typical playbook is to sell this beautiful picture of paradise, shorter lead times, happy teams, everyone hitting their dates. But it usually backfires. Why? Well, because for the people in the trenches living in the day-to-day chaos, that vision feels like a fantasy. It's so disconnected from their reality that it just creates skepticism, not excitement. That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's what every manager, director, and VP is wrestling with. If selling the dream doesn't work, then what on earth does? How do you get your entire organization, especially those overloaded, skeptical folks in the middle, to not just go along with a new way of working, but to actually become its biggest champions? Well, the answer lies in this really powerful and, frankly, deeply counterintuitive strategy. It's called the Blue Dolphin Process, and its real power comes from doing almost the exact opposite of what all the traditional change management books tell you to do. Instead of pushing a solution from the top, it gets the organization to pull it from the inside. So here's the absolute key. Forget about critical chain for a minute. Just stop talking about the solution altogether. The real first step, the actual starting point for any meaningful change, is to get everyone to agree on the problems, the frustrations, the shared pain that they are all feeling, right here, right now. Okay, let's dive into phase 1. See, this isn't about crafting some slick sales pitch. It's about building a case so solid, so data-driven, and so based on the daily frustrations of your teams that it becomes completely undeniable. You're not a salesperson here. Think of yourself as an investigator, leading a shared discovery. You kick things off by just putting words to the chaos. Too many projects at once? Yep. Constantly switching gears and losing focus? Of course. Different bosses giving you conflicting priorities? A daily struggle. I mean, this isn't some abstract theory. This is the life of anyone in a modern engineering or IT department. When you list these symptoms, you get everyone in the room nodding along, and you start guiding them toward the real root cause, a hidden, system-wide bottleneck. But nodding heads are good, but they're not enough. You have to make that shared pain objective, visible. And you do that with a really simple tool called a flow screening survey. It's just a short questionnaire that takes all those flow problems and turns them into a clear picture, like that radar chart you're seeing. It creates a benchmark that everyone can look at and immediately understand. And out of that survey comes a single, incredibly powerful number, something like this, 47.4%. So what is that? That's the potential throughput increase that the teams themselves believe is possible if you could just get rid of those flow problems. This isn't some consultant's fantasy number. This is potential, quantified by the very people doing the work. Now, you take that potential and you translate it into the language that executives speak, the bottom line. As you can see here, even if you only capture a fraction of that potential, it can have a massive impact on sales and profit, often without spending an extra dime on resources. Now you've got a rock-solid business case, and you have the full attention of senior leadership. Okay, so you've got the executive buy-in, but now comes the real mountain to climb, middle management. These are the people who feel all the pressure, and they often feel like they have the most to lose. This next step is where the real genius of the Blue Dolphin process comes in, because it's designed to turn your biggest potential blockers into your most committed owners. So how do you do it? I mean, think about it. They are already completely swamped, they're juggling fragile systems, and now you're showing up with something that just looks like more work and a ton more risk. If you just walk in and say, okay, everyone, implement critical chain, you're dead on arrival. You have to completely change the conversation. So instead of giving them an order, top management gives them a challenge, a mission. They say, go find the fundamental flaw in this critical chain thing. If you find one, we promise we won't do it. This just flips the entire script. Suddenly, they aren't being told to adopt something, they're being empowered to critique it. And here is the brilliant part. In order to find a mistake in something,
what do you have to do? You have to understand it deeply. So they form these small groups and may start teaching themselves the core ideas, the logic, the buffer management, the whole shebang. They're not just preparing to learn, they're preparing to attack the idea. What you get from this process is so much more powerful than any training session you could ever pay for. It creates this deep, self-generated understanding. They're not just memorizing jargon from a slideshow. They are internalizing the concepts, and they're translating it all into their own language in the context of their own teams. Okay, so they've studied it, they've debated it, and, spoiler alert, they almost never find a fundamental flaw. They've actually built up a really solid understanding. So now what? How do you get them to pivot from that theoretical knowledge into a practical plan? The question changes. It's no longer, is this theory right? It's, okay, what would stop us from doing this here? And as you can see, they workshop it together. They start putting all the real-world obstacles on the table. Customer demands, old IT systems, resource fights. They are literally collaboratively designing the implementation plan by finding and solving for their own roadblocks. And this right here, this is the ultimate win. Because they are the ones who identified the obstacles and designed the solutions. It's no longer a change being forced on them. It has become a change being led by them. They built the plan. They now have a profound sense of ownership over its success. All right, let's bring it home with the final phase. We've got the data, we've got true ownership from middle management. Now it's time to actually execute the plan they designed and weave this new way of working into the very DNA of the organization. And the final step is just beautiful. The implementation plan they created, it is itself run as a critical chain project. You can see the progress being tracked on a fever chart, just like this one. What this does is provide immediate, hands-on practice with the new methodology. The organization learns the discipline by applying it to the change process itself. It's brilliant. So let's just boil it all down. The whole Blue Dolphin process really comes down to these three counterintuitive principles. First, stop selling the dream of tomorrow and start with the pain of today. Second, don't try to convince people. Create a way for them to discover the solution for themselves. And third, and this is the most critical one, don't push change. Let your managers pull it by designing the path forward themselves. When you get right down to it, what makes a breakthrough change like this possible isn't some charismatic leader or a perfect PowerPoint deck. It's a simple, powerful truth about people. We will own what we help create. They don't just implement a new method, they adopt it because they've challenged it, they've understood it, and in the end, they've made it their own. And that is a change that actually sticks.